what's up guys, it's Ch3 and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to go into chapter 3 of The Women of the Bible Speak by Shannon Bream. This would be the stories of Tamar and Ruth. So let's get right into this video with the story of Tamar. This video may contain topics of the Bible. If you do not wish to listen to anything that contains anything about the Bible or watch me read about the Bible, I suggest you click off the video now. You have been warned. Outsiders, Tamar, Genesis 38, 1 through 30. When we look for inspiring women in the Bible, Tamar's story is not exactly the first one that comes to mind. It's strange and uncomfortable, and Tamar makes choices that, let's face it, can in no way be explained to a children's Sunday school class, so her story tends to remain a footnote on one we might quickly move past in search of material that's easier to understand and a character who is perhaps easier to relate to, but to fast forward past her would be a shame because Tamar is a fascinating woman with a story we need to hear. She's an outsider, not part of the family made up of Abraham's descendants who will become the nation of Israel. Nevertheless, she is part of both David and Jesus' family tree. She's also an example of bold choices and of God's redemptive power in the midst of our messy lives. Her story appears in a kind of interlude in the story of Genesis, and the placement is important. The previous chapter is the beginning of the story of Joseph. It ends with the selling of Joseph into the slavery by his envious brothers. The Bible tells us that selling him is Judah's idea and in Genesis 37:11 that his brothers were jealous of him, and with good reason. They were all sons of Jacob, but Joseph was the firstborn son of the wife Jacob truly loved, Rachel. Genesis 37:3 doesn't beat around the bush telling us that Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. So was Judah looking for a way to get rid of Joseph for good, or was he looking to avert a worse fate? Both. The brothers' original intention was to kill Joseph, but Reuben convinced them to abandon their deadly plan by suggesting that the brothers sell Joseph to a passing caravan of Mennonites. Was Judah hoping to save Joseph from his bloodthirsty brothers, or was Judah in fact the ringleader? Immediately after Joseph is sold into slavery, Judah left his brothers and went to live among the Canaanites. He married a Canaanite woman, had 3 sons by her. He built a life there away from his father's family. His sons grew up, and eventually he acquired a wife for his oldest son, but was apparently not good. Scripture tells us that he was wicked in the Lord's sight. Genesis 38:7. It is at this point that Tamar enters the picture. She was the wife of likely married to him as a teenager. Imagine her situation, a very young woman given in marriage to a foreigner through no choice of her own, living in an unfamiliar culture with a husband so wicked that God decides to kill him. After Death, custom dictated that his wife be married to his brother. This is known as a levirate marriage. Levar is Latin for husband's brother, and was the custom among many Semitic peoples in the ancient Near East. It later became encouraged as part of Jewish law in the Torah. The idea behind it is a simple one. If a married man died without leaving behind any sons, it was the duty of his brother to marry the widow and have sons with her, sons that would be counted as the dead brother's heirs. It was a way of affirming that the dead continued to live and be part of the community they left behind, and initially at least Judah followed this custom. He dutifully gave Tamar in marriage to his second son, Onan. Apparently, Onan was not a fan of the arrangement. There is a selflessness in Levirate marriage because the male partner has to be willing to recognize the firstborn son he produces with his brother's widow as the heir of his deceased brother and not his own. Onan apparently was not willing. He went through with the marriage in public, but in private he practiced an early form of birth control that meant Tamar would never conceive a son. As the remaining eldest son of Judah, Onan was likely calculating the economic cost of producing an heir for The son would take a portion of their inheritance that would otherwise go to Onan. Fully aware of Onan's selfishness, both physically and economically, God struck him down too. It is at this point that Judah apparently decided that Tamar's seeming barrenness was not the result of the wickedness or selfishness of his own children. It was Tamar. She must be the problem. So he sent her back home to her father's house, making an excuse about his youngest son, Selah, not being old enough yet to enter into a marriage with her. In reality, Judah had no intention of letting her within 10 miles of yet another son of his, Levirate custom or no. Genesis 38:11 tells us exactly what Judah was thinking. He may die too, just like his brothers. What choice did Tamar have but to obey and trust that Judah would eventually do the right thing? The Bible tells us that Tamar went to dwell in her father's house, but now, not how she felt about any of this. We don't know if she ever loved or how she felt about Onan. Maybe she never loved them. She would not have been consulted. Marriage was something arranged by men, a business deal to be struck, like the sale of goats or land. If Tamar was a business deal, then she had just one bankrupt, twice a widow. She now waited to see if her father-in-law would make a good on his implication that she would one day become Sheila's wife. The news of Tamar's bad luck had probably spread. Most likely, there were whispered rumors and quiet chuckles inside tents about the woman who was so devastatingly unlucky, an object of ridicule. Tamar must have felt the label to a fatal plague that no one would want to contract. It would have been so easy for Tamar to say, well, they must be right about me. I must truly be worthless, and maybe Judah is right. Maybe it really is all my fault, and that his sons died. Like Job, she could have sat on a dung heap and wailed about her life and turned out no marriage, no future, no prospects of any kind of normal life but being a dependent in her father's house until the day she died. But that's not what she did. She didn't lose sight of the fact that it was Judah who had done the wrong thing. So she formulated a plan. Here's where the story goes off the Sunday school rails, because after realizing that Judah has no plans to join her in marriage with his son Sheila, Tamar decided to trick Judah into sleeping with her. She took off the distinctive clothing of a widow, wrapped herself in a veil, and journeyed to a place where she knew Judah would pass on his travels. Tamar's face was obscured so that her father-in-law wouldn't recognize her. Assuming she was a prostitute, Judah, who himself had become a widower at this point, said, "Come now, let me sleep with you." She accepted but drove a hard bargain. He would have to leave his signet ring cord and staff until he could return with payment. These details, especially the jewelry, tell us just how wealthy Judah must have been. They give us a glimpse of power he held, in stark contrast to Tamar's lowly position. More important, such items in those days were a form of identification, the closest Tamar would come to having DNA proof when she needed it. Once they had slept together, Tamar took her father-in-law's ring cord and staff and left before he could recognize her. Judah did try to find her later, sending a friend to deliver payment and get his things back, but she had vanished. The friend even asked around about her. "Hey, what about that prostitute who sits by the side of the road here?" But no one had ever heard of such a woman, and Judah was worried he could become a laughingstock. Genesis 38:23. If he pressed the issue. 3 months later, Tamar, now pregnant, was so far along that it could no longer be concealed. Judah was outraged. Genesis 38:24 documents his reaction: bring her out and have her burned to death. In sending her away from his home, Judah had effectively repudiated her, and he would have been happy never to hear from her again until she publicly embarrassed him with a pregnancy. He had been happy to ignore her until now. Now suddenly he cared a lot about what she did and how she made him look. Remember, he was still responsible for her. People must have been whispering, "Isn't that the woman who was yes to Judah's sons?" Oh, poor Judah. The snickers in the tents started up again. Judah was publicly humiliated, and he wanted to make Tamar pay for it, even if that meant putting her to death for making the exact same error he himself had made just a few months before. Tamar sent him an unmistakable message, delivering his signet ring, cord, and staff. As she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law. "I am pregnant by the man who owns these," she said, as she added, "See if you recognize whose seal and cord and the staff there are." Genesis 38:25. That is the end of this video. I will stop it right here and see you guys in part 2 of this story. Bye.